are 4 races down with 1 more to go in the Kyalami Mini Series, and 2 drivers set to go head-to-head for the championship crown here this evening, live on the SimGrid. This is going to be a fantastic evening of entertainment as a field full of top-quality drivers in GT3 machinery with a custom BOP get set to do battle for 75 minutes as the Kyalami Series sings its swan song, final race of what has been an enthralling 3-week season. Andy McEwan here in the virtual commentary box, joined as ever by David Christie. David, it's been quite some journey. It doesn't feel like it's just been 2 weeks. We've crammed a lot of entertainment, a lot of exciting racing into those 2 weeks, and it all boils down now, doesn't it, to what is, I think, going to be a terrific head-to-head battle for the title.
That absolutely goes without saying, Andy. A very good evening, and as always, it's amazing to be part of this. Felix Rupert, Christian Lozanov locked in this head-to-head battle all through this little mini season that we've had here for the Kyalami Series, and it literally comes down tonight to winner takes all. I mean, you just couldn't ask for a more thrilling end to the season. And again, we say this all the time, Andy, about it only seems like a couple of weeks ago that we started this, and it really does fly by so quickly, doesn't it? All these races merge into one. I can't even remember 2 weeks ago with the Lamborghini STs. It feels like it's all just been the one night, and this is the final swan song, as you say.
Doesn't help that each and every one of the 4 races we've had so far have been so crammed full of incidents, action, overtakes, dramatic moments, controversy. It is hard sometimes to think back to what were the defining moments of the season, but as you can see on your screen now, it has been incredibly evenly matched between Felix Rupert and Christian Lozanov, 2 wins apiece. They've never been off the podium, either one of them. The only deciding factor was that second race of the season in the Lamborghinis back in week 1, where Christian Lozanov had that 3rd place finish. I mean, his whole championship could be scuppered because he had a disastrous 3rd place finish. That really goes to show the standard of driving here. Regan Mitchell has been on the podium once as well. Alexander Novikov, had it not been for a dramatic non-finish in the second round, would have been up there fighting for the championship as well. You can see 3 3rd place finishes for him, but a very scrappy second race of the season has pretty much now counted him out of the fight for the championship, and it absolutely has. There are only 2 drivers mathematically that can win the title, but David, if you can finish in the top 3 in the points, you do get a little bit of prize money. Not life-changing money by any means, but it's there to be won, and if you give these drivers a prize to shoot for, then you can rest assured they will do.
Absolutely, and while the prize isn't big bucks for esports terms, it's still enough to make your money back on the championship and get a couple of beers in as well. But look, when you get to this stage, when you get to this level, and these drivers aren't racing for the pennies. It's a nice little bonus, but they want those bragging rights. They really want to get one up over their fellow sim racer. And, it feels good to end up ahead of 30 other pro grade sim racers.
It is a field stacked full of talent, really, and they're set to do battle, as I've said, for 75 minutes around the Kyalami circuit. If you haven't joined us for the last couple of weeks, the first 2 weeks of the Kyalami Series, and you're not familiar with what this severely underrated circuit looks like, well, let's take a hot lap, shall we, around the circuit so we can guide you around.
Kyalami in the Zulu native language means my home. We're on board at the Lexus RCF GT3, heading through the kink before the run down to the tight left-hander here at Crowthorne, down from 240 in 5th to first gear at 80 kph on the apex, then a slight elevation change up the hill through the Jux K sweep, going up into 3rd gear before the 90 left here at Barbecue, down to 2nd gear, 120 kph on the apex, allowing the Lexus to drift to the right hand side to carry the momentum exiting the corner. All the way across to the left now, before turning in and committing to the right hand sweeper at Sunset, which feels like it goes on for quite a long time, up to 4th, before hitting the brakes again, down into 2nd, 110 kph through the apex through of Clubhouse Bend, before we get the real sense of undulations here at Kyalami, down into the S's, through the left and then through the right, bouncing off the rev limiter before snatching 4th gear as you head up to the left-hand hairpin at Loikop, all the way back down from 4th to 1st gear. One of the slowest corners on this circuit before the roller coaster ride that is Mineshaft. Pulling 3rd, pulling 4th, using consistency and commitment through the apex at 5th gear at 220 kilometers an hour before the heavy braking zone down into the right-hander here at the Crocodiles. Allowing the car to go to the left-hand side before taking the next right-hander here at Cheetah. Don't take too much curve on the right before going back to the left and then swinging the car back on the approach into Ingwe. The final corner here, and that on the Lexus RCF GT3. It's a hot lap here at Kyalami.
So that is what the Kyalami circuit looked like then from on board one of the Lexus GT3s. We will have a Lexus represented on the grid tonight. A real variety of car, actually. The drivers were given a free choice of GT3 car to use for tonight's race. Most of them actually selected their choice of car before the season even started. One or two, I believe, have changed their mind partway through. It's going to be a battle of the front-engine British cars here, though, isn't it, David? It's certainly as far as the championship battle's concerned. Felix Rupert will be at the wheel of an Aston Martin. It's the Bentley that's the car of choice for Christie and Lozanov. Both, so I'm told, good cars around this circuit.
They really are very well balanced machines around here, and it's a very awkward one as well for them because obviously 75-minute race, it's a little bit longer than they're used to in their driver stint. So I'll be interested to see how strategy comes into tonight as well. Don't discount as well Regan Mitchell in that Honda NSX Evo. That would have been my first choice around here, but seeing the way that Regan the way that Regan drives, and I know obviously I was heaping praise on Regan last week and getting that 5th place, but I'm very curious to see what that Honda can do, as well as Dave Jr. at 7th place in the championship, but he's out in the Merc AMG GT3 Evo. That Merc, I think, is going to be a dark horse tonight.
Yeah, I think so. In fact, the top 7 in the championship, 6 of them have chosen front-engine cars. Regan Mitchell is the only driver who's gone mid-engined in that Honda. And whilst Regan cannot win the championship mathematically anymore, he is joint 3rd with Errol Verwey. And remember, there are $20 on the line for the driver that finishes 3rd in the championship, so that is winner takes all between the two of them. And actually, 5th place Alexander Novikov, 6th place Rob Taplin, and 7th place Dave Jr. could all still finish 3rd in the championship. So we've got a pretty exciting 5-way fight to finish on the bottom step of the championship podium as well. Qualifying, though, as you can see, is underway. Just a 15-minute session then that will set the grid for our 75 minutes of racing later on. And as you can see, we're racing in the evening. We started the series off in round 1, racing before dawn, and we've moved through now into the latter couple of hours of daylight here at Kyalami. So track temperatures will start to dip as we go later into the race. In particular, that will change the car's handling, change the way that the drivers are managing their tyres as well. But for this qualifying, David, a 15-minute session, and an awful lot will ride on this. It's not that easy to overtake around here. We've seen that already. You can do it, but it's going to be tricky to come from anywhere further back than, I'd say, the 2nd or 3rd row on the grid to win this race. So what happens over the next 13.5 minutes could be pivotal.
It certainly will be, and while the likes of Regan Mitchell and Errol Verwey might not be in a position to win this championship, they can certainly do their part in changing the outcome for the front two, for Felix Rupert and Christian Lozanov, because for whatever reason, if Regan and Errol find themselves ahead of either of those front two protagonists, they're going to have a lot of eyes on them on how quickly those situations get resolved. And remember, this is a straight up race. This is, while it is for the championship, these positions on tracks, that none of these drivers are going to feel obliged to hand over places or to get out of anyone's way, and nor should they either way. So yeah, this is something very different from what we've seen. Obviously the drivers made that choice right at the beginning of the season. Whether or not that is the right choice is what we're going to find out in the next sort of 75 minutes after qualifying's done. But some big choices have been made. I just hope they pay off.
Yeah, worth pointing out then, this 6-point difference between Repair and Lozanov, there are 8 points different between finishing first and second in the race. You get 50 points for a win, 42 for second, and 36 for third. It then goes down to 32 points for fourth, and then in 2-point increments per position. So, if Repair and Lozanov are first and second in the race in either order, then it is winner takes all. I think the same is then true of second and third as well. It's when they're off the podium that it starts getting interesting, and that could make life a bit easier in a way for Felix Repair if you do have a Regan Mitchell or an Alexander Novikov that get up there and take the first couple of positions on the podium. Then actually at that point Repair wouldn't have to beat Lozanov in the race to win the championship, but we'll get into all of that once we get into the next portion of the night in the race. So we've got 11 and a quarter minutes left of this qualifying session. Lap time slowly starting to go in, and there you can see a couple of these significant names on your screen. Top right is Regan Mitchell about to come through and set his benchmark time in the Honda, that we expect to go pretty well here. But we have also seen, haven't we, David, that it takes them maybe a third, if not longer, in the session to really get up to speed. No matter what the car has been, it's taken a little while for them to get the tyres in the window, hasn't it?
It has, and that's obviously because it takes that little time to not only get the heat in the tyres and the brakes, but the confidence as well, and maybe get that clear run, because there is a lot of traffic on the circuit. There's 36, 38 other cars on there just now, so getting a free bit of track is just as difficult as being able to commit to a fast lap. So getting everything set up is absolutely crucial, because what you'll find is that the more they push, the closer to track limits that they'll be flirting. It brings them closer to that little bit of danger and potentially invalidating their lap. However, what you could see is some drivers just absolutely taking the bull by the horns and just absolutely going for it. I mean, Felix Repair there at 140.851. That's kind of about the pace that we're going to be seeing. Might even see low 140s, high 139s.
Yes. Meanwhile, I've found my new favourite thing ever. Denise Pope is giving us something I didn't know I wanted here. A modern GT3 McLaren with a early to mid-noughties Formula 1 McLaren livery on it. I don't think I've ever seen a GT McLaren with this particular livery on it, and it looks stunning. It is absolutely the best looking car that I've seen so far tonight, and Denise Pope 18th quickest at the moment in that McLaren. Now at the front, Christian Lozanov doing exactly what we thought Lozanov would do here. He's gone second fastest in the Bentley. It is Felix Repair quickest, Lozanov second, Regan Mitchell third, Novikov fourth, Errol Verwey fifth, and Patrick Nage in sixth position. Nage really dropped down the order last week because he wasn't able to race with us, unfortunately, but he's been a front runner all season long. So Repair and Lozanov first and second, and have expected that, didn't we, David?
We certainly did, and this is it. Is what you'll find is that with the qualifying going on, the times are going to come down and down and down again. We're at 5:20 p.m, so that track, Andy, is going to cool down as well. So that's going to allow some faster times to get in, but. Seeing, there we go. That's just stopped sideways on the track, just so we can appreciate it a little bit more, Andy. That MP412 look-alike McLaren livery. It does look absolutely gorgeous, because obviously one of my favourite times for McLaren back in the day, because that was when DC and Mika were teammates in there. But a glorious livery on that machine, and great to see that. But yeah, back to the point in hand, qualifying with this track cooling down, this is going to get faster and faster and faster, and the last 2-3 minutes are going to be so frantic. I'll absolutely guarantee it.
I think the very quickest times are likely to come towards the end of the session. That's certainly been the way that it's been so far. Regan Mitchell then comes out of the final corner. He's got the tyres into the operating window. He is on, we believe, a very quick lap. Comes across the line and takes the provisional pole position, but not far behind him. Is that Christian Lozanov in the Bentley? No, it was a different Bentley, I think, but Mitchell to the pole. Repair is in the pit lane, so he's gone for a mid-session interval then to change tyres. Lozanov down to third. Gerhard Walzer here, sixth fastest. He's also flying. The Honda seems to be the car to have. Two of them in the top five now. And Kevin Rowland there also improves, albeit only to 16th, in another one of these very rapid Hondas. So Regan Mitchell then living up to the billing you gave him a week ago here, David. Clearly at one with that Honda and a quarter of a second quicker now than anyone else.
Yeah, that was a fantastic lap there. I'm glad that Mike Yao decided to go back with Ian Harvey here, because I just want to talk about this livery. I mean, I've not seen this before. That is, I'm normally a little bit hit and miss on liveries. That is, yeah. Obviously, it's based on the real life one, but yeah, that is absolutely glorious.
Yes, I think it was, as Michael Hamlet has just reminded us, I think he's right, I think it was run by Boots on Gignon in, I want to say, the Spa 24 Hours one year, but if only David Addison were here, I'm sure he'd be able to put his anorak on and tell us, but it's a very good-looking car, that's for sure, and going pretty quickly as well on that lap. Dominic Paquette here in the Audi, number 38, he's down in 14th at the moment. Looking at drivers that are maybe not performing quite like we'd expect. Carlo Barbary perhaps down in 19th. You'd expect him to be a little further up the order. Likewise for Ket, really, and he is going quicker. He's 1.7 seconds off pole at the moment, but at the moment he is on track to find at least 7 of those tenths back. So this lap time, David, if he completes the final sector, could put him into the top 10.
And that's exactly what you want, given that it's... It's a tall order. I mean, to get 8-9 tenths of a second is like an outstanding lap. And yet it's only going to put him up in the top 10. And how he saved that? Well, he almost saved that. Sideways into pit lane, Andy. And 9.5 for artistic impression, I think, there.
He came within a couple of feet there of getting stuck in the pit lane as well. I think he could have got wedged sideways there on pit entry, which would not have helped him. Also would have proven tricky for anyone that wanted to come into the pit lane, although with 5.5 minutes to go, you probably don't have much time now to get back in and change the tyres. So Regan Mitchell still quickest there. There you can see the Audi actually rejoining in the back of Dominic Paquette. We've got Carlo Barbary here in the Bentley, only 19th at the moment. You would have expected more out of him. And he delivers more, jumps into 10th position now, just ahead of this man, Josh Inman, in the Aston Martin. So we've got Honda from Aston Martin, from Bentley, from Honda, from Bentley, from Aston Martin, Mercedes and Bentley in the top 10. Only 2 mid-engined cars in that top 10, David, and they are both Hondas. So perhaps a bit of an underrated car. I know you said it was a bit of a surprising choice, but it clearly is working a lot better than the other similar mid-engine cars.
It certainly is, but also have a look at how badly the Porsches are struggling. The highest one is number 57 there, Fong, in 15th place there. I just really don't see how they've got any impact, especially given that David is the fastest car up there so far, 1.6 seconds off of the leader there. So that's going to make it, what's that, 142.1 I think for David Fong. So Josh Inman for Inman Motorsports though on a fairly decent lap, and again he's on to possible, I think he's maybe going to get 6th or 7th place here. He's lost a little bit of time towards the end of that lap there, but he's still a good 4-5 tenths up. So 4th place, that's a good effort towards the end there, Andy. And I'm more interested to see Felix Rupert and Christian Lozanov not making any improvements, although just realising that Inman now joins them. They're just a whisker off of Lozanov.
Well, yeah, Inman only 3 thousandths away from splitting the 2 championship contenders, and that would make life interesting, certainly make it difficult for Christian Lozanov. Remember, he must beat Rupert in this race. Carlo Barbary jumps up 1 position at the expense of Dave Jr. there to 10th position in the Bentley. Max Grime here, 21st at the moment, is some 2.25 seconds off pole position, but this lap is about half a second better than he's gone previously. So this might trouble the top 15 if the final sector goes well. And you would expect the final sector to be a good sector for the mid-engine Lamborghinis. It's all tight corners, changes of direction. The mid-engine cars are really agile through these tight and technical corners. But this custom BOP perhaps is hurting them. You could see there the car just didn't want to turn through Cheetah, the penultimate corner. Out of the final turn, it accelerates over the hill. What can Max Grime do then? He's going to jump into the top 20, surely. Yeah, 16th, not a bad effort, but still not as quick as you'd expect those Lamborghinis to be ordinarily.
I think that could be the fact that this custom BOP, as you alluded to there, Andy, it was a bit of an unknown when these drivers took these cars, so they could have taken them based on personal preference, personal experience with the cars, and it just how it's all worked out. But Josh Inman in this 110, he is on a blinder right now. He's 2 tenths off right now, and Josh Inman, goes into second place there, 9/100ths of a second, and that adds a little bit of a spicy mix to the evening tonight.
Doesn't it just? And he's less than 1/10 of a second away from pole position. That is a fantastic effort. Now Simon Wilkes looking to propel his SimSport Racing Aston Martin up the order a little bit. He was 9th at the start of the lap, crosses the line and jumps up 2 places. 7th place for him, so he clears Patrick Nage and Errol Verwey, who's a bit further down than you'd expect for him. Now, Dominic Fouquet has extricated himself from the pit entry. I don't think he ever did any damage to that car. There was maybe a tiny bit of contact with the wall, but not enough to hamper him too much. And again, the Audi suffering from uncharacteristic understeer there through the penultimate corner. Let's see what Fouquet can do, though. He's 17th place at the moment. Comes out of the final turn. Don't run too wide there because you can exceed track limits. He got a bit of wheel spin there out of the final corner. And in the end, it is not an improvement. Josh Inman isn't going to improve this time either. He's backed off, you can see, looking maybe for one last bit of clear track, but there's only just over a minute to go in this session, David.
And that's it. It's a case of how far he can get himself around that track. I think he's left it too late. But here comes Regan Mitchell as well. He's on a bit of a stormer right now. Again, we'll wait till we see it Sector 2 to see if he can improve here. But Errol Verwey in the number 85, 9th place. I mean, all it's going to take really is 4 to 5 tenths of a second to get himself, and even then that's only going to get himself up into, say, 5th place right now. Regan Mitchell's not going to improve because he's invalidated his lap, but he will get another lap in just now. Verwey going very, very wide across that corner there, and he's invalidated as well. But all these drivers going to get, Andy, one more bite at the cherry here.
Yes, but what's interesting is that none of this really, and this is the first qualifying session we've had in the 3 weeks, this is the first one that's not really featured Rupert and Lozanov in the pole position conversation. They're 3rd and 4th, which isn't terrible, but Regan Mitchell and Josh Inman, they are the two that we're focusing on, although Rupert, I believe, is green, i.e. on a personal best in the early sectors. The checkered flag is out, but if you're already on a lap, you're entitled to finish it. That's exactly what Felix Rupert is trying to do. Can he put at least one car between himself and his big title rival Christian Lozanov? That would just give him a bit more of a cushion in the championship going into this final race. Crosses the start-finish line. It's an improvement, but it's not enough to change from 3rd. He will start then on the inside of row number 2. Now, Regan Mitchell, can he improve? He had time, crucially, for one more lap, despite invalidating his previous effort. Inman has bailed for the pit lane, though, so actually, in a way, Regan Mitchell doesn't really need to go for this, but he's going to keep on pushing, I'm sure, just to try and consolidate this pole position.
Be interesting to see how this one pans out, because he's got Lozanov behind him in that 545 machine as well. Lozanov still on his lap. We've got a couple of yellow flags after the checker flag comes out anyway. So here comes Regan Mitchell. Oh, a little bit of the curve is that's exactly what happens. It bounces the car out to the right hand side there. But here comes Alexander Novikov. This is huge. This is 5th position in the 369. Comes out that final corner here. What can Novikov do? Comes across the line. Can he improve? He goes up to 4th. So that is wow.
Yeah, that's significant, isn't it, though, because it knocks Lozanov down a position, so there is a car between the two title rivals now. He lost a 10th at the final sector there, and he was only a 10th and a half off pole in the end, wasn't he, David?
And that's exactly it. Those little bits, Andy, could be the final parts of the story unravelling for Lozanov, because let's face it, all we have to see here is Felix Rupert just staying ahead of him. That's all he has to do. It doesn't matter where he finishes. As long as he finishes in front of Lozanov, that's it. Game's over.
Yeah, exactly. Lozanov, to win the championship, has to finish ahead of Rupert, no matter what position that is. The further down the order they both are, though, the more cars Lozanov has to have between them in order to overhaul this 6-point deficit. Well, if that's as exciting as the race is going to be afterwards, I think we are in for quite the show. Regan Mitchell then gets the pole position in the Honda, and you can see there the Honda with no extra ballast added with this custom BOP, so that is significant. Possibly explains why the Honda, more than the other mid-engine cars, perhaps like the Lamborghinis, which have 30 kilos on board, possibly explains why the Honda is the better mid-engine car to have. It's Mitchell then from Inman row 1, Repair and Novikov will line up on that second row together, and then you will have Christian Lozanov 5th on the grid with Gerhard Walzer alongside him. So Lozanov is already behind in the points. He's starting behind the 8 ball now, that 8 ball being Alexander Novikov, who is between himself and Repair. At what point in a 75-minute race does Lozanov sort of have to throw caution to the wind? Because it's easy to say that it's a long race and that there's no point taking any risks at the start, but if Lozanov doesn't clear Novikov quickly, he might never see Felix Repair again in this race. So how aggressive can Lozanov afford to be here into that first corner to make the progress that he needs for the championship?
That is the $1,000,000 question, given that there's a whole heap of points on offer for first place. I believe it's 50 points for your race winner. If Regan Mitchell is in pole position and he takes, heaven forbid, those 50 points, and Christian Lozanov DNFs tonight, then the two of them are going to be tied on points. I think, though, Lozanov would take that second place with because of the 2 wins. So Lozanov can't lose. So if it's me, you're either coming home with a trophy or you're coming home with a steering wheel. It's one of those two things. It's that whole classic thing of win it or bin it.
We mustn't forget as well that the drivers around them, particularly Mitchell and Novikov, aren't going to play all that nice with Repair and Lozanov, because they've got their own fight for third in the championship, haven't they? Mitchell, remember, joint third in the points with Errol Verwey, but Verwey's down in 10th on the grid in his Bentley, so that may be a bit of a long shot for him to buy back into that fight. But then you've got Novikov 5th, 20 points behind Regan Mitchell. So if Novikov, for example, were to win the race and Mitchell was outside of the top 5, then Novikov could still snatch third in the points. So, ordinarily you would like to think, if you were either Felix or Christian, you'd like to think that the drivers around you would treat you with a bit of respect, being that you're fighting for the championship. But when they are also in a fight for a championship position that does have a small payout as well, they're not going to just wave those championship leaders by, are they?
They're not, and they're not expected to. That's the thing as well, is the fact that this is while it is part of the championship, this is its own standalone race. This GT3 has been built up so much because of the difference compared to the Lamborghinis and, say, the Porsches. But one thing that I've also just realised as well is that Lozanov is actually going to be directly behind Felix Repair on the grid, and I don't just mean behind on the grid, but I mean physically behind that car. There is the argument that the more shady sim racers may be tempted to accidentally not brake as much into turn 1, and I don't think that's going to happen. But me being the terrible sim racer that I am, that's exactly the sort of tactic book that I'm into at this point.
You'd never be tempted to do that, David, I'm sure. I don't believe that.
If it's me, Andy, they're getting sent to the moon. They're going to the nether realm. That's what's happening.
There we go. If we ever see David Christie on one of these SimGrid entry lists, we know that there's going to be drama into that first corner then. Yes, I know what you're saying, though. There has to be a temptation at least to be aggressive, because the only way I think that Lozanov's going to win this championship is to put Felix Repair under some fairly intense pressure. So, yeah, weave around behind him going into the first corner, flash your lights, jink to the inside as if you're going to go for a real dive bomb move. It just might, force that mistake out of Repair. And if Repair makes a Horlicks of the first corner and drops down into the midfield, that could be the moment that wins Lozanov the championship. So that run up the hill into Crowthorne is going to be a really, really interesting few moments of the race, and indeed of this championship. There are, of course, live stewards here with the SimGrid. One of the great things about the SimGrid is that we have people monitoring the racing as it happens, so we don't have any of these awkward post-race penalties. Any penalties that will be dished out, hopefully, will be dished out during the race. So if there is any contact, any driving standards that fall a little bit below par, then the stewards will step in. They will issue penalties. They have done that all season long, and that just helps keep this not only authentic but fair, because there would be a temptation in some other sim racing competitions perhaps to get a bit physical with your championship rival and try and knock them off the road, but you ain't going to get away with that here, are you?
You don't, especially since this year the SimGrid have been massively cracking down on any sort of misdemeanors, misbehaviour, and any sort of shenanigans really. Whereas last year it was a little bit rough and tumble. It was the Wild West of sim racing. But when you get to this level as well, Andy, you don't want to see races decided by somebody punting someone else off at turn one. You want to see it at a nail-biting finish. You want to see it going right down to the wire. These drivers as well, and this is what it always brings it back to the whole conversation about sim racing and sim racers. This is what the drivers want as well. That exhilaration of beating someone fair and square.
Yeah, exactly. You want to win it properly, don't you, really? And I'm sure championship are going to be looking to do exactly that. So, green flag lap then is underway, the warm-up lap, last chance to build just a little bit more temperature into these tyres, into the brakes. It's already starting to go dark, isn't it? The track temperature has dipped actually 3 degrees since the start of qualifying to the start of the race. 29 degrees it was at the start of that qualifying session. You can see in the top right of your corner the live ambient on the left and track temperature on the right. Ambient always a bit lower than track, of course, because the track absorbs that sunlight directly. But that sunlight is starting to fade, which means that the track is going to evolve over the course of this race. And David, it's a long race. All of the races we've had so far have been 30-minute sprints. This one is a 75-minute race, and there is a mandatory pit stop. All of the cars have to come down the pit lane at one point during the race. There's no pit window, so you can do it at any point you want. But that pit stop is another really interesting factor in this race, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and it throws again strategy all up to the forefront of tonight's race. If it's me personally, I'm pitting in the first 5-10 minutes. I want to get it out the way, and then you just charge. You charge for what your life is worth for that final 60-65 minutes. If I'm Lozanov and I've not got ahead of Rupert in the first lap, that's it. That's when you come in lap 1, lap 2, get it out the way, and just do an absolute charge for the rest of the race, and just hope you can do the undercut.
The trouble with a super early pit stop, I guess, is that you run the risk then, don't you, running into the back of the pack again. If other people haven't yet stopped, then you could end up getting embroiled in traffic. But of course, you don't know that until you roll the dice and you give it a go. So yeah, this is going to be an intriguing 75 minutes of racing here to round out the Kyalami mini series here on the SimGrid. What a fantastic 3 weeks of racing it's been, well, 2 weeks so far, and I'm sure this championship decider is going to be fittingly dramatic. It is Regan Mitchell, though, and Josh Inman on the front row, two drivers who cannot win the championship, but Mitchell absolutely could finish third in the championship if he stays where he is and finishes ahead of the likes of Errol Verwey and Alexander Novikov. But behind them is where the title battle is then. Felix Rupert, the second car on the inside line, and Christie and Lozanov, the third car on the inside line, right behind him. They are going to be the two championship contenders. Out of the final corner then, 75 minutes of racing, 35 cars on the grid, one champion, and we will know who that is going to be at the end of this, the final round of the Kyalami mini series, which gets underway now with a 2x2 rolling start. The lights go green and Regan Mitchell powers the Honda towards that first corner. The two cars behind him, though, the championship rivals. Novikov already looking up the inside of Rupert, who slams the door in the face of the Bentley driver and then goes up the inside of Josh Inman as well for third position. That looks like maybe Novikov coming storming around the outside in the Bentley. Oh, contact further back. One of the McLarens, I'm afraid, has gone around, but that was really good driving that from Felix Rupert, and if Josh Inman slots into fourth, which it looks like he will, Rupert will have kept a car between himself and Lozanov, and that was pretty much the dream scenario for our points leader.
Fantastic start there, and again you can see that Regan Mitchell away with it right now. That Honda looking so strong already in the lead. Novikov in that second position, and Lozanov is so desperate to get past Josh Inman right here. But yeah, this is going to be a wild first 2 laps.
Yes, I think so. We believe Carlo Barbary might have been off at the S's somewhere. Ian Harvey getting stuck in then in the Boots on Gignon liveried BMW. He started in 15th place, I think, or he's in 15th place now, halfway around the first lap. There is an Aston Martin off there to the left-hand side of the road, and that was... no, it wasn't Josh Inman, but it was a white and red Aston Martin. Inman, meanwhile, defending from Christian Lozanov. Lozanov has to get on with this now. He can see Felix Rubert getting away, and there's contact with Josh Inman. Inman is on the grass and around, and Christian Lozanov is going to have to make sure he doesn't benefit from that, but Inman is off the road completely, and already before the end of the first lap, the man that is second in the championship is involved in contact, and now he is on the receiving end of some contact. It is all going wrong here for Christian Lozanov. He's flicked the windscreen wipers on as well as he tries to keep the car pointing vaguely in a straight line. That, I fear, is going to come back to bite him.
Which one? Because there's 7 different episodes there. Yeah, look, Lozanov had to do what he had to do. His goose is cooked. He's going to get absolutely mauled by race control for 2 separate issues. He's just pushing too hard. Cars are now letting him have nothing of it. And I've got to be honest, barring some sort of minor miracle, yeah, that's not looking good for him, is it? He's getting flushed all the way down 9th place now. Yeah, it's not looking too great.
Yeah, the second contact, I think, was with Errol Verby, who has come storming up the order from a slightly lowly 10th place on the starting grid in the Bentley. He has really moved up through the order, but the first one with Josh Inman, that's definitely the one that he's likely to get in some trouble for, because you can't really expect to hang around the outside of someone through a corner like the Crocodiles and expect them to give you room, and he wasn't fully alongside either, so I think there will be possibly a penalty incoming. Dive bomb up the inside. That was a heck of a move there from one of the Lamborghinis. That was Grime, I think, wasn't it, in the 15 Lamborghini, just picking the pocket of 2 drivers in one go. There was a bit of argy-bargy as he went through, but he does get the place. Right, meanwhile, Alexander Novikov leads the race with Regan Mitchell second, and Felix Rupert laughing his socks off in 3rd place. He's got away with the leaders. He's got a 2-second gap back to Patrick Nage in 4th. His championship rival, Christian Lozanov, has dropped down to 9th. Now, that, coincidentally, David, is 1 place behind Josh Inman, so I wonder if Lozanov has dropped behind Inman there, just to try and maybe not eradicate the possibility of a penalty, but at least try and limit the penalty that he's given. If he's seen to have given that place back, it might help his case.
No, I don't think that. I don't think that's what's happened there. I think it's just literally a lot of Babalal into the wall there. Goodness me, that is a lot of damage to that car. We've got another crash. Oh, Lozanov's off as well. On Fouquet, that's going to have been contact there. And that's it. That is your championship pretty much decided then and there, Andy.
Yeah, you'd have to say that's likely, because Christian Lozanov is going to drop out of the top 20. You have to be in the top 20 to score points. So even if there was some unforeseen disaster now for Felix Rupert, the chances of Lozanov outscoring him by the 9 points that he needs are pretty much 0. He drops behind Denise Popes. That's well out of the top 20. What a shame, you know, and this is why I asked the question, David, before the race got going. How aggressive could he afford to be? Because the temptation is to put it all on the line in the first lap. But it's not always worth it. It is still a 75-minute race, but that, I think, was all triggered by the fact he could see that Felix Rupert was escaping with the leading 2. There was already a gap forming between Rupert in 3rd and Josh Inman in 4th, and then that forced Lozanov into going in for a risky move, and when that one went wrong, it's the snowball effect, isn't it? You start getting even more aggressive to try and dig your way out of that hole, and eventually it all comes completely unstuck, and Lozanov now finds himself, as you say, I think, completely out of contention.
I think he's almost going to be completely out of the race, if I'm honest. That's it. It's not the best. One person I would say keep an eye on is Carlo Barberi, because he's the first person to have pitted so far, away down at the back of the order. But again, interested to see how much he can recover by doing that very, very early pit stop there. You can see Babalal into the pits. That's very likely because of the damage on that car. He's going to have been forced to that. And to answer your question, Andy, about how aggressive he could have been, it's a vicious cycle, because it's desperation, isn't it? Rather than, trying too hard. He's just desperate to get past. And like we said, this is a standalone race. These people are not, or these other drivers aren't going to stand aside and let you just muscle your way in. They're going to try and hold in, and we go to a replay here. This is going to be Loznov on the Aston. Now, if my memory serves right, I think he was actually off track when he started that contact there. This might actually be why he's so far back. We see Babalal off. Oh, so he's actually been hit from behind from that car. So that is even more frustrating.
Yeah, that was Scott Ticehurst, I think, wasn't it, in the Lexus? So, yeah, so he dropped back behind him, and that was the second incident, as you said, for Loznov. He dropped behind him when he was trying to get the place back. Then there was that contact between Babalal and Fouquet up the road. That delayed Fouquet, stacked everybody up, and actually that one was not Loznov's fault, but he shouldn't have ever been in that back end of the top 10 battle, should he? He should have been a lot further up the order had he not had the contact with Josh Inman early doors. Simon Wilkes here in the Aston Martin, by the way, I think is the Aston Martin that I saw off on the first lap. I'm quite frankly not entirely sure now, because a lot has happened since then, but it was a black and red Aston Martin, so Simon Wilkes has done well to recover to 13th place. Loznov, we believe, has gone off the road again. Now, this is Loznov on the outside here of Babalol, then into the first corner. Babalol gets into the back of... sorry, that was Verwey up behind Babalol, I should say. Babalol gets into the back of Fouquet, then the secondary contact between the two. Mercedes gets fired off into the barriers, and further up the road is where Loznov has that contact with Scott Ticehurst as a sort of indirect result, really, of the previous collision between the other two drivers.
You hate to see it. You really hate to see it. I was looking back at that first lap incident on the Crocodiles, and I'm absolutely positive we see a 15-second penalty coming through for Junior there in the number 10 Mercedes there. But on the exit of the Crocodiles, I'm absolutely positive that Loznov actually went off the track, kept the foot in, and just tried to throw the car back onto track, and that's where he caused that contact and caused that collision. So if that is what's happened, I mean, that will be that will be absolutely thrown to the wolves from race control here. That's the turn 1 incident with the number 4 of Gareth Mills in the McLaren 720. I mean, the fact that we only had one car going round at turn 1, that is a great achievement for everyone. But yeah, Regan Mitchell, though, start to catch back up to the tail end of Novikov and looking a little bit menacing here.
Yes, now in the absence perhaps of a championship fight, the fight for third now becomes the main priority, doesn't it? And of course these are two of the drivers in that fight. Novikov does need to beat Mitchell, but he needs to beat him by a few more places. If Novikov wins the race, I think Regan Mitchell has to be out of the top 5 for Novikov to move ahead of him in the points, and then it also depends on where Verwey ends up at the end of the race. But as it is, first place is far from guaranteed for Novikov, because Regan Mitchell is asking all the right questions of the Bentley driver there, weaving inside and out as they headed towards the right-hander at Sunset through Clubhouse. Now they head towards the S's. You're riding inside the front bodywork of the Honda in second place, and at this stage of the race it looks as though Mitchell might be the quicker of these two.
He's looking quite fighty, isn't he? He's looking very, very aggressive. This is Joost Loon for Half Practice Hero in the 37 Porsche, trying to recover. I tell you what, Andy, that comment I made about the Porsches in qualifying, that's starting to come undone, because they're doing very, very well on the recovery drive. You've got David Fong and Smith in the 302. What's that, 11th and 12th place respectively. So Chad Smith in that Porsche did a cracking job, but Joost Loon trying to fight off the Aston he's got in front, and the Lamborghini in front, and the Aston behind. That is Chris Humphreys in front of him, and Sader, who's got a drive-through as well in that Aston Martin. So he's going to want to get rid of these two very, very quickly indeed.
Yes, he is. Oh, and that will help, because off goes the Lamborghini of Humphreys, and the Porsche runs wide as well. So that's going to be two fairly easy overtakes made, I would imagine. No, only the one. So the Porsche number 37 stays ahead. The leaders, though, close again at the top of the hill there as they head through Crowthorne and then into the Sky sweep up through turns 3 and 4. The left-hander, I should say, at Barbecue at turn 5 beckons, and a good exit from here is essential because it's a long drag down to Sunset, and it wasn't a good exit for Novikov. Regan Mitchell looks to the outside, to the inside, back to the outside again, just didn't quite have the impetus to get fully alongside before the quick right-hander. Right, lap 1 incidents and penalties coming in. 15-second penalty for car 10. Excuse me, that is Dave Jr. for contact with car 55, which was Carlo Barbary, and also car 55 involved in further contact there with car 420, Fadi Seda, and that is what the drive-through for Seda was for. So not a great start to the race there for Carlo Barbary. Now, Josh Inman has recovered well here, actually, hasn't he, into 5th place. He was towards the back of the top 10 after that lap 1 contact, but he's repeating his qualifying pace here now, back into the top 5.
Oh, now more updates as well. Incident on lap 1 involving cars 42 and 417. That's Patrick Nage and Gerhard Volzer. That's been deemed a racing incident, but more surprisingly for me, Christian Lozerov and Josh Inman, that's a racing incident as well. I did not see that one coming.
I didn't want to disagree with you at the time because you are, after all, the only one of us that's ever actually sat in a real racing car and done a real race. But what Lozanov's defence will have been was that he was already alongside and he technically had the inside line for turn 14, which is the left-hand kink. Now, even I will admit that's a fairly, it would have been a very close call, let's put it that way, but that will have been his defence, and I can only imagine that's the reason that he wasn't given the penalty. But anyway, that is the decision that we've come to. And yes, so the judgment was that Josh Inman could have left more room for Christian Lozanov through the left-hand part of the Crocodiles, which I do sort of agree with. Right, anyway, back to the battle for the lead, because Regan Mitchell there was looking to the outside of the race leader, and now he goes to the inside into Clubhouse, tries to get the lead away from the Bentley, which does seem to be on the ropes here, doesn't it?
That's such a clever move. What he's trying to do is trying to get the Bentley to roll off the brake, which is going to unstable the cab and push him even further wide. But what he's actually done is slightly compromised his own line there, and he has to do it again. But that Honda, I mean, we were wondering what that had up its sleeve, and to be honest, that looks like such a well-balanced car in the hands of Regan Mitchell, because you look at Rowland in the 501, Kevin Rowland, he's got the Honda as well, and he's down in 17th place. So obviously this is the way that Regan is handling it, and you can see Errol Verwey getting a time penalty starting to come through as well for the number 85, so we'll get an update on that in just a second. But yeah, Regan Mitchell, look at how quickly he closes back on to Novikov as well here with an hour to go. Novikov going wide at that final corner. That allows the Honda to get the momentum, tuck into the slipstream, and it's all about the run down to turn 1. Regan Mitchell is going to pull off a superstar move here.
He's going to have to be good on the brakes though, isn't he? Because the Bentley's got the inside line, and that is, well, that's what being good on the brakes looks like. No, he's outbraked himself. He was too late on the brakes, and the Bentley will stay ahead. So Novikov stood his ground. He picked his braking point, didn't get too carried away with the side-by-side battle. When you're in a situation like that, David, and someone tries to outbrake you from, and you know that you've braked as late as you physically can into that corner, if they brake 10 or 15 metres later than you, you can always be fairly sure that they're not going to make the turn. And Novikov was really calm there. He was fairly considered. He knew that he had braked as late as he could. The Honda was always likely to run a bit wide, and what that's done now, of course, is brought the Aston Martin and Felix Rupert into the battle as well.
And Felix Rupert, I think, was looking quite happy just sitting in that third place. He's on an exhibition drive tonight. He's just out for a Sunday drive, enjoying the view here at Kyalami and having a bit of fun, because let's face it, Lozerov is absolutely nowhere right now. But Novikov in the 369 machine, under as much as the pressure that he's had from Mitchell and from Felix Rupert, he's handled it like an absolute boss. But Andy, the other thing I've got to mention is, can you believe we've only done 15 minutes? It feels like we've done 45 minutes already.
We have crammed a whole race's worth of drama into the first quarter of an hour, haven't we? But you would expect things to settle down at this point. But here we are with a three-way fight for the lead. 3 different makes of car represented here. Bentley ahead of Honda, ahead of Aston Martin, and Regal Mitchell still frustratedly sat in second place. Right, 5-second penalty to Errol Verwey for aggressive driving against car 545. 545 being Christian Lozanov. So I'll tell you what, Lozanov has come out of this smelling of roses relatively, hasn't he? He had that contact with Inman, which he got away with, and then actually he was on the receiving end of some contact from Errol Verwey, and Verwey's been given the penalty. We've also got car 21 and 420. 420 was Fadi Seder, a second drive-through penalty for Fadi after contact with Andrei Zafiritos in the Porsche. So Seder having a bit of a night to forget. Lozanov, by the way, is still running. He is 27th place at the moment. Now, his first target has to be to get into 16th place, because he has to score at least 8 points in this race to have any chance of winning the... Well, he needs 9 points, really. So he needs 15th place to have any chance of winning the championship. If Lozanov were to finish 15th and something went wrong to Rupert and he non-finished, then Lozanov would be champion. So he's not mathematically out of it yet. Desperately trying to keep this alive for as long as I can. I realise it's a very long shot, but at least he is still in the race, David.
It is. And the other thing as well for Lozanov, I mean, that shows just what a sim racer he is. The fact is that, you know, all the odds are against him. It looks massively likely that it's a done, dusted deal, as we see Denise Paul up the inside. That was lovely. Humphreys, to be fair, was very, very accepting of that move, and Humphreys just fires it up the inside. Denise Pope thinks, no, I'm not having that. And how awesome is that, though, Andy? The fact that, you know, even down to 21st and 22nd, where you think that it's slower cars, but these two still absolutely going at it hammer and tongue right now.
Well, and this is what we've seen throughout the 3 weeks, isn't it? That obviously a lot of the talk, understandably, has been about the front runners and the fight for the race win and the championships. But the battling up and down the field has been intense in every single race, and everyone has always had someone to fight with, whether they're fighting for first or 21st place. And that is the great thing about this Kyalami Series. It's given us some great entertainment, even when it's not necessarily been for the race lead. Simon Wilkes here, then we're on board with the Aston Martin drive now, 11th place. He's got the BMW ahead of him. I think that's the only BMW in the race. It's certainly the only one that's anywhere near the pointy end. That is Ian Harvey. 10th position then for the BMW driver. Not far ahead is the best of the Lamborghinis, and that is Van Niekerk there in the number 89 example, and actually the second highest placed mid-engine car in the race. So again, 3 completely different cars here, all very, very evenly matched. So up the hill they go then, and Simon Wilkes looking to try and take advantage there of a slight mistake maybe from Ian Harvey in the BMW. Harvey went a bit wide into the first part of the S's there, and as a result has dropped back a bit there from Van Niekerk in the Lamborghini. The BMW, though, of course, is really good in a straight line, isn't it? So the Aston Martin is going to have to get a bit inventive here to find a way through, perhaps into the crocodiles. It is one of the best overtaking opportunities on the circuit. But he wasn't quite close enough there to sling it up the inside. Back to the leaders then. Alexander Novikov really having to drive defensively here, as for the second time in the race, Regan Mitchell looks to the outside into turn 2. There's just no way he's going to get around the outside of that big Bentley, though. It's physically a very big car. It fills the track. It's also surprisingly good on the brakes. So as good as the Honda is on the brakes, Novikov is still managing to hang on. And all the while, Felix Rupert with this grandstand view thinking, I'd love to get involved in this, but I daren't, because it could still, at this stage, cost me the championship.
It absolutely could, and that's exactly what he's doing. This brilliant measured drive from Felix Rupert. He doesn't need to do anything. He just needs to stay on the track, watch all the action in front of him, and if anything happens between Novikov and Mitchell, just pounce on it and make the move.
Yeah, exactly, but I don't think he'll get too involved, although easier said than done, isn't it? Sometimes you have no choice. If they start really holding each other up, it's sometimes safe to go on the offensive rather than just sitting there and trying to stay out of trouble. Back to this very entertaining battle going on just outside the top 10. Simon Wilkes has dropped away again now from Ian Harvey. into the clutches of a pair of these Porsches. We've got 3 Porsches running 12th, 13th and 14th, although Nicholas in the 27 example is some way behind these two. But you've got the 302 here of Chad Smith. You've got David Fong behind in the yellow and black Porsche. And you're right, David, the race pace for these Porsches is certainly stronger than it was in qualifying. Granted, they've gained some positions by staying out of trouble, but the car looks pretty racy. Straight line speed, though, I don't think is its big strength.
That's it, it swings and roundabouts. So the Porsche, I mean, look at the fact that you've got 4 of them within about 6 positions. That shows you where it should be on the track. The Lambo did a decent drive and getting itself up into the top 10 as with the BMW. These Porsches, I think, outnumbered, outgunned, but Novikov, I think, is coming huge trouble there, and Regan Mitchell back in the lead.
Yeah, I believe Novikov made a mistake going through Barbecue, and that has allowed Regan Mitchell through. We'll get a replay for that as soon as we can, I'm sure, but it was always a matter of when, not if, that you sensed, didn't you, David? Because clearly Regan Mitchell felt he was quicker. He was significantly quicker in qualifying. It's just hard to get past that big old Bentley, isn't it? But he's done it, and I do now expect him to be able to pull away.
And that's exactly it. Once he's got that clear air, now I wonder if Rupert's going to try and make a move. I think he'll still be happy just to sit in 3rd place. But look at Simon Wilkes; he's harassing Ian Harvey in that BMW, making an absolute nuisance of himself in that Aston Martin, and rightfully so, wanting to get himself up into the top 10. And I do wonder how strategy is going to play in, because now we've got 53 minutes left to go, Andy. When are pit stops going to come into play?
Yes, because we've had a couple of early stoppers, but most of them I think are going to wait probably till the half race mark, honestly now. I think if you weren't going to pit in the first few laps, you might as well split the distance and try and make sure you're not doing an excessive amount of time on one set of tyres, because, well, that's if they plan to change tyres, of course. They might not at the pit stop. There was the mistake, by the way, for Christian Lozanov. Sorry, not for Christian Lozanov, for Alexander Novikov in the other Bentley, as he went through the left-hander at Barbecue, just lost the rear of the car. He was pushing hard to hang on to that place, wasn't he, I suppose, and in the end, the pressure told, and that did allow Regan Mitchell through. And as you can see, Regan is now nearly a full second clear of Novikov in 2nd place. Rupert 3rd, Patrick Nage having a quiet race in 4th, Josh Inman recovering to 5th, is only 2.5 seconds behind him now, and 3.5 ahead of Errol Verwey, 6th with this 5-second penalty. Scott Ticehurst is 7th, David Dancer is 8th, Van Nierkek there in 9th position, and Ian Harvey in the big BMW is still running strongly in what is generally a fairly unfavoured car, actually, these days, in 10th position. 2nd place battle then comes down through the S's. Felix Rupert, you're right here, I think David has the luxury of being able to pick and choose his battles. He could spend the rest of the race sat underneath the rear wing of Novikov, or just a few car lengths back. He's got this nearly 6-second gap back to Patrick Nage now in 4th. Will he? He is a racer, and he can see a chance to move one step further up the podium here, can't he?
He certainly can. And like, if you're sim racing, if you see a car in front of you, your instinct is just to get straight past it as soon as you possibly can. There's no question of it. So interested to see how this will pan out, but I've got no doubt that if you've got that car, you're going for it.
Yes, I think that is probably the case. Meanwhile, Gareth Mills off for the 2nd time, this time at the S's. That one looked like he did it all by himself, though. Whilst Porsches are at play here, this is Chad Smith just fending off David Fong. Their battle has dropped them away from Ian Harvey and Simon Wilkes, who themselves have swapped over. We caught the end of that a moment ago. The Aston Martin moving ahead of the BMW, and one of them there kicking up the dust coming out of Cheetah and up into Ingwe, the final corner. Accelerate out of the turn. This is where the rear engine Porsches excel. Right, here we go then. Warning for car number 55, which is Barbary again, for failure to hold the brakes. But that's only a warning this time for presumably when he had that incident on lap 1, he let the car roll back into the track, which is a no-no. 5-second penalty also for car 826. For aggressive driving. That's Humphreys involving an incident with cars 4 and 9, Gareth Mills and Armando Sanchez. So a 5-second penalty applied to Humphreys, which you can see is also listed on the timing tower to the left-hand side of the screen. So a few more drivers getting in trouble now. The race control still catching up, I think, here, aren't they, David, with everything that happened in those first 5 or 10 minutes.
And they were absolutely manic, that's the thing. It takes them so long to go through all the different angles. It's a really difficult job they've got.
Really is, and it's a bit like the whole VAR discussion in football, isn't it? I would rather they took a moment to analyse all of this mid-race rather than let it be decided afterwards and let people at the end of the race say, well, yes, they won the race, but that should have been a penalty. Right, we're on to lap 2 now. Progress, everybody. We've made it out of lap 1. Second lap incidents now. 5-second penalty for car 79. That's Denise Pope for aggressive driving against car 420, Fadi Sader, who's been dishing out a fair bit of contact and was on the receiving end that time. Meanwhile, Porsche's side by side, and Smith will stay ahead of Fong on that occasion. Right, back to the penalties now. 10-second penalty to car 15, Max Grime, for aggressive driving against both cars 10, Dave Jr., and 57, David Fong, who's on our screen now. So more penalties there. It's going to be, by the time we get into the second half of this race, David, I think it'll be quicker to tell people who hasn't had a penalty. It's been one of those races, hasn't it?
It's one of those Oprah moments, isn't it? You get a penalty, you get a penalty, you get a penalty. But look, and this is what you like to see, because it just means, Andy, that the cars are pushing each other to the very limit and going past it on multiple occasions. And again, they're being punished where necessary, but it doesn't affect the flow of the race.
Yes, exactly, and it is, of course, exactly what you would have in real-world motorsport as well, with live stewards. But of course, the joy of sim racing, and we discussed this last week, I think, is that they can instantly have access to as many angles as they want. They can watch it in super slow-mo, they can watch it frame by frame if they want, to absolutely make sure that they've got a proper understanding of what went on out on track, and that means the chances of there being incorrect decisions are far, far lower. We're still on board here with David Fong running in 13th place, but the driver I've got my eye on even is Josh Inman in 5th, because he's now less than 2 seconds behind Patrick Nage. That was about 2.5 seconds a few laps ago. There he is, right on cue, heading out to the final corner, chasing an identical car, of course, Patrick Nage in the Aston Martin, and Inman is another 0.3 quicker on that lap. So Josh Inman, what do we reckon? Can he get back into podium contention here? He deserves a podium based on his qualifying effort, but even once he gets past Patrick Nage, he'll still be those 7 seconds adrift of the top 3.
I gotta be honest, I don't think it's going to happen. Just purely because the pace hasn't been there. So I'd love to see it as well, but I just don't think it's possible with the way that things are going just now. However, Felix Rupert and Novikov starting to get a little bit closer, and Regan Mitchell away off into the distance. Yeah, there could be some fireworks between these two. That would be very interesting to see how these two end up.
And these two, who have been inseparable for a while now, but finally the big mistake comes there from Chad Smith, and so David Fong takes 12th place, becomes the highest placed rear-engine Porsche on the grid then. 12th position for him now, 1.6 seconds behind Ian Harvey. Back to the second place battle, and yeah, I guess the more Novikov is seen to be holding up Felix Rupert, the more likely Rupert maybe is to go for this, but he's still, as I've said, 7 seconds ahead of Patrick Nage in 4th place, so there's no immediate rush. If Rupert had a big queue of cars stacked up behind him, it would be different. The safest thing for him to do then would be to either, well, bail out of it completely or force away into second place and try to get away, but he just doesn't have that sort of pressure behind him at the moment, does he? So there's no real need to take the major risk. Armando Sanchez, by the way, about to go a lap down in the Nissan. Denise Pope is in the pit lane now to serve that drive-through penalty. Still, we haven't seen many of our leaders come in to serve their penalties, though, which is kind of what I expected. We are inching, though, ever closer towards half-race distance, of course, in this 75-minute race. We are now 30 minutes nearly into the race. So within the next 10 minutes, I think, David, we might see a few of them head for pit lane. And that, of course, could be the relatively risk-free way for Novikov to try and Rupert to try and clear Novikov here, couldn't it? If Rupert pits early, gets a bit of an undercut maybe on Novikov, then that way he doesn't have to try and go wheel to wheel with him out on track.
Absolutely, but again, it's all about getting that strategy right there. It's just minimising risk. It's something that we talk about all the time here at SimGrid. It's managing risk and minimising any risks that you take. At the moment, I mean, there's Novikov up the inside of one of the lapped cars there. It's just a case of having to try and outsmart your opponent. At the moment, Novikov, for example, doesn't have the pace to catch up with Mitchell. If he was, he would still be on the tail of him. Mitchell is in a class of his own right now. Rupert isn't going to do anything. He's happy where he is. He doesn't need to do absolutely anything. Lozanov coming back into that 20th position just now. I think he is going to make his way up. But I'm also realising that gap to Fouquet, I think, was 13 seconds, and it's now 5 seconds. So Lozanov doing great work on getting up here, but I think it quite honestly is too little too late for Lozanov. He's only doing 142s, which is on the pace of the leader, but you look at Josh Inman, 141.8. Yeah, Josh has the biggest chance of all. There's so many different stories to unfold over the next 40 minutes here.
What I will say about Lozanov, though, is that he's pitted. You can see the green block next to his number, which means he's pitted. Those with an orange number 1 are still owing us a pit stop. So Lozanov will gain more places as other people ahead of him pit. How many he gains awaits to be seen, but he's in clean air. He's got his head down. He's finally calmed himself down, I think, after that dramatic opening 5 or 10 minutes. If he can get himself into that top 15, it just applies a little bit more pressure to Felix Rupert. If Rupert finds himself then in a wheel-to-wheel battle with someone, he's really going to have to think twice, because a non-finish for Rupert could see him lose the championship as long as Lozanov is inside that top 15. So that's what I said earlier on. That's the target here for Lozanov. Put yourself into the top 15, apply as much pressure as you reasonably can to Rupert, and then just hope that the sim racing gods are in your favour. All Aston Martin battle here then for 8th position. Simon Wilkes has now caught David Dancer. Wilkes has got some good pace here and gets through, and that's just as well, because the alternative there was that he ended up in the gravel trap after getting assaulted by David Dancer. Wilkes does then move into 8th position. That was a bit clumsy, that wasn't it, from Dancer?
It's not the best. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the end of this little mini season, and you're just going to send it. Whenever you've got a possible chance, you're just going to absolutely send it left, right and centre. Felix Rupert, I'd like to hope he's going to send it, but like I say, I think he's just going to be quite content here in 3rd place.
Yes, indeed, but he's got to plan this strategy right. He'll want to make sure that when he pits, he comes out in clean air, and of course, the drivers don't have the luxury of sort of getting a full picture of where everyone else is on the track. They'll have their relative list up on their screen, so they can cycle up and down that and try and work out, right, okay, so a pit stop's going to cost me X amount of seconds. If I drop X amount of seconds, I'll fall into this little bit of traffic, but they're not guaranteed to get back out on track in the part of the order that they want to be. So if he were to pit at the wrong moment, he could come out in a worse position than he's in now, in a way. Patrick Nage is about to be in a worse position than he's been for a while, because Patrick has had quite a lonely race so far, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's about to become a lot less lonely, because Josh Inman has got this gap down now from, it was several seconds when he first broke through into 5th place. It's now less than a second between the two Aston Martins. This for 4th place. Inman is arriving with momentum here, isn't he? So it's really important that he tries to seize that opportunity straight away. If he spends a couple of laps now sat behind Patrick Nage, that momentum gets lost, and it just gets that little bit harder to make the pass.
Absolutely, it does. It makes it so difficult if he's not able to get that done. Because Andy, you know yourself, when you're wheel to wheel, you've got somebody in your mirrors. You're going to make that car as wide as you possibly can. You're not going to give that position up. So yeah, it makes it very, very difficult. But I mean, how good has Josh Inman been on this recovery drive? You asked earlier on, about 15 minutes ago, is Josh capable of recovering that podium position? And I wrote it off saying, I don't think it's going to happen. I take that back. I think Josh has got a lot of pace right now, and he could actually make that work.
Maybe it's all going to be about how quickly he gets past Patrick Nage, isn't it? We've got a few more penalties, I believe, that we're about to be told about. There they are. Right, we're up to laps 3 and 4 now. An incident on lap 3, drive-through penalty for car 38 for an unsafe rejoin. So that is Dominic Fouquet. And an incident also on lap 4, which involved 545. That was Lozanov, and 420. Fadi Seder was a racing incident. So Lozanov managed to dodge another bullet there. But that penalty that will come the way of Fouquet is going to give Christian Lozanov another place, although Lozanov has caught him already. Lozanov is now 18th. He can make that 17th, essentially, once Fouquet serves the drive-through. So getting into that top 15 is looking a lot more realistic now, isn't it? David Danson, meanwhile, losing touch here slightly with Simon Wilkes, despite Wilkes going slightly grass-tracking there out of Clubhouse. Van Niekerk is only a second back, though, and that Lamborghini is starting to come on strong. Now, where the mid-engine cars are a bit down on raw pace, David, they might have a slight advantage on tyre management, because this place will eat the tyres a little bit. The front engine cars are usually a bit harder on their tyres than the mid-engine ones, so could we... Well, Van Niekerk is already into the top 10, I suppose, but he could gain a couple more places through the second half of the race.
He certainly could, and you wouldn't bet against him doing that. I'll be very, very interested to see that. But look at Lozanov. I mean, look at the pace that he's got as we see Fouquet going into the pits for his drive-through. But he's already onto the back of the number 55 there. In fact, there's a lapped car in front of him. It is. That's 25th place. That's a Grind that is actually getting overtaken here. But, I mean, the pace that Lozanov has got right now, he could very well find himself up in the top 10 if this keeps going.
The thing is, he's got this pace, which kind of tells us he didn't need to take those risks on the opening lap, because if he'd have just let the race settle down a bit, he might well have been able to get himself into that 4th place and challenge Felix Rupert for 3rd, but hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? Incident on lap 7, cars 9 and 79, a drive-through for 79, which is Denise Pope for avoidable contact. I made a mistake earlier on saying she'd be given a drive-through for another incident. It wasn't, it was a 5-second penalty, but she now has got a drive-through penalty for this contact with Armando Sanchez. So I occasionally know what I'm talking about, occasionally I don't, and sometimes I inadvertently predict the future. So Denise Pope there for an incident I didn't even see gets given a drive-through penalty. Right, this looks quite tasty. This is Van Niekerk in 10th place, Ian Harvey in 11th, and David Fong in 12th. Fong has really ran away, hasn't he, from Chad Smith to the tune of 6.5 seconds, and David Fong looks pretty pacey at this point of the race.
He certainly does. He's looking very, very fast indeed. And, you know, Harvey is under all sorts of pressure right now. Harvey did get to run away a little bit, but I mean, he's just looking so fast as number 57. And I never thought I'd be saying that about the Porsches tonight, because the Porsches have been absolutely nowhere. But maybe now with these tyres starting to wear off, the Porsches starting to come in a little bit to their own, Andy.
Yeah, and the Porsches are probably the best car on saving their tyres, because they are rear engines, so the rear tyres get a bit of a workover maybe, but those front tyres really don't. There is very little weight over the front axle, so, and this is quite a front tyre centric circuit. The front engine cars are really going to chew through their front tyres through some of the high speed corners in the middle sector especially. David Fong then looking for a way past the BMW, looks up the inside line, tries to sneak his way into 11th place at turn 2. That doesn't quite work though. All of these drivers, I remind you, still owe us a pit stop. Carlo Barbary down in 16th place is the highest placed driver who has pitted, followed by Christian Lozanov. Now that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to suddenly appear in 1st and 2nd once everyone else stops, but they should gain quite a few positions once the bulk of the field choose to pit. And I am actually now a bit surprised we haven't seen more pit stops. Maybe they're going, instead of going for the super early pit stop, David, maybe they're going to leave this right till the last sort of 15 minutes or so.
It could be, and to be honest, once you're this point anyway, you might even leave it further. You might even just do a splash and dash and just take your pit stop with, say, 5 minutes to go. We've seen that actually before in some of the one race championships. As we see Fong fire up the inside, the BMW, a little bit of contact, saw that one coming. Fong lets the BMW back through.
Oh no!
Yeah, that's not the best, is it?
Oh dear. That was a back marking Lamborghini. I didn't quite catch which one it was, but none of that was necessary, quite frankly. You're right, you could see that coming a mile away, couldn't you? And you just wanted to tell them, no, don't do it. But David Fong tried to take advantage there of Harvey getting backed up by a back marker. They made contact, and then as they were trying to recover from it, they tagged the Lamborghini as well. And it was Landreth, we believe, in 21st place that got tipped into a spin. Thank you very much, Michael Hamlet, for letting us know about that. The Lamborghinis, we haven't seen a lot of them, quite frankly, so memorising which one is which isn't all that easy to do. If this was anything other than a championship decider, Felix Rupert would have had a go here at Alexander Novikov for second place. I'm fairly sure of it, because they've dropped nearly 5 seconds now to the race leader. In ordinary circumstances, Rupert would be pulling his hair out here that he couldn't get past the Bentley. I really agree with you there, David. I don't think he's even trying to right now.
He definitely isn't. He's doing everything he needs to do. He's comfortable. The car's feeling very, very good. He's keeping Novikov within touching distance, but you know, he doesn't need to do anything right now. It's a cool, calm, collected race from Felix Rupert there in the number 71 as we cut to a replay. This is the number 19 Lamborghini there of Mike Landreth. And at the moment he's all on his own on the track, and I think this is where he collects or gets hit by the BMW. Oh, there's not really any excuse for that, is there?
Yeah, that's got the words unsafe rejoin written all over it, hasn't it, really? I agree that Landreth could have left more room, but it's not really his job to do so, is it? Because the car that's on the grass really should be paying attention. So we'll wait and see what comes of that. Josh Inman has pitted. That's significant. The first of our leaders then, or our sort of top 5 or 6 drivers to come in. Remember, Inman was stuck behind Naj, wasn't he? He'd caught Naj, and he hadn't been able to find a way through. So that, I think, David, is a really sensible call. If he hasn't got past him in a couple of laps, pit, hope that you fall out into some clean air and try and get that undercut. That might be a really, really clever move.
Well, let's see how it goes, because of course the strategy has been such a key thing tonight as well. It's just so interesting to see how these different things have panned out, because what is fascinating as well is I'll come back to that thought in a second here. This is the Lamborghini just in front of Denise Pope, and I presume this is going to be the penalty around the outside of the Nissan there. Tries to cut it into the inside. Yeah, that's a clear-cut penalty on the Nissan. Little extra bump, and takes the position. So yeah, you kind of saw that one coming.
Yeah, if you're going to go for that move, you have to fully commit to it, don't you? And she was sort of neither here nor there. So that was, yes, a fairly straightforward penalty, I think. Armando Sanchez then in the Nissan, unfortunately, on the receiving end of that little bit of contact there. Back to Josh Inman there. So now, this hasn't really worked for Inman, because he was hoping to drop out in clean air. He pitted because he was getting held up by a car in front of him, and he's rejoined behind 2 cars in front of him who are both engrossed in their own battle for 10th place. This is Ian Harvey and David Fong, and this is what I was saying before. The drivers don't know exactly where they're going to filter back out into traffic, do they?
They do not, and Denise Pope's still fighting with that Lamborghini right now. This is just an epic battle, and again, you know, all credit to Denise and to the likes of Lozanov. It's been a difficult race, but they still, you know, they keep the foot in, they keep going, they keep pushing forward, and what you'll find is that determination and that, you know, consistency will pay off for them.
Yes, Lozanov, by the way, 16th. So remember, 15th was the magic number he was gunning for. If he's any lower than 15th, then no matter what happens to Rupert, he can't win the championship. So he's only one position behind that. It's Barbary in front of him who has pitted, and those two have sort of been working their way through the order together, but Lozanov is the quicker of the two. So we'll keep one eye on that, just in case there's a bit of life to be breathed back into this championship fight yet. You never know. Still, 31 and a quarter minutes to go. Scott Ticehurst has pitted, by the way, as well from the top 10. He's the second of our top 10 drivers to pit, comes out 8 seconds behind Josh Inman. There is the fight for 15th place. So Christian Lozanov has now caught the similar Bentley of Carlo Barbary. He is clearly quicker and wants to try and get into this 15th place. I don't know whether he realises the possible significance of 15th spot. Lozanov's quite a smart driver, isn't he? I'm sure he'll have done his homework. He'll have worked out the point situation. That, though, was David Fong, was it not, coming out of the pit lane? So I think he's into 15th anyway. And now he's flashing his lights at Carlo Barbary to try and get what I think will, when the timing tower updates, become 14th place then. But Lozanov wants to try and get through here as quickly as he can, doesn't he? Because he wants that clean air. In clean air, he's one of the fastest drivers on the track.
He certainly is, and it'd be interesting to see just exactly how he can make this work, because Lozanov gets side by side with the Bentley and tries to stick it round the outside. Surely not. Surely Lozanov can't make that work, but I think he's done it. I think he's got Barbary, fires it up the inside. Andy, that is one of the moves of the evening so far.
It's the dirty side of the road. It's a long, long right-hander. They're on the tyres that have seen their best probably now, because both of these were in early, remember? So that was a really impressive move, actually. You're right, round the outside at Sunset, but it's worth doing because the next two corners are left-handers. So if you can buy yourself the inside line into Clubhouse, that will pretty much seal the deal as far as that overtake is concerned. And now he heads down into the mine shaft with this big open expanse of clean air ahead of him. He is 7.5 seconds now behind Mills in 13th place. I'll tell you what, Lozanov could sneak into the top 10 here, depending on how much time people lose from pitting inside the top 10 at the moment. He could still get back into that top 10, and that will, of course, guarantee him still second place in the championship at least. And if anything happened to this blue and lime green Aston Martin in third place, it could still be enough for the championships. This is not over now, and I wonder whether Felix Rupert is aware of the fact that Lozanov is back into the top 15 now, because if he is, that's not going to make him any more likely to go for a move here on Novikov, is it?
It really isn't. That's the thing. I've kept saying, I mean, Novikov isn't faster than Felix Rupert. Felix Rupert is absolutely 100% managing the pace of this race. But look at Josh Inman here. He is currently your leading charger that's been into the pit lane there. So depending on how Josh can do in this final stint here, yeah, I'm really fancying Josh for top 5 at the very minimum, potentially even a podium.
Yes, that was an important move, that, for Inman, because it puts him back into some clean air. Remember, we documented a couple of laps ago that he'd come out in traffic, essentially, behind David Fong and Ian Harvey. Well, Fong pitted, and he's now cleared the BMW, but how much time did it cost him whilst he was stuck there? If I were Patrick Nage, I might have been tempted to pit a bit earlier, actually, and try and take advantage of the fact that Inman was being held up in traffic, because that's the battle, isn't it, for fourth place. Inman pitted early to try and clear the Bentley of Nage in fourth position, but none of the top 7 drivers have yet chosen to make their pit stop, nor has actually the BMW of Harvey that Inman just cleared. Van Niekerk is in, though, in the top Lamborghini, so he will now start slipping down the order as well. They're running out of time to do this. We're into the final 28 minutes now, and it does look as though these leaders are not going to pit unless they absolutely have to, because they don't want to drop into traffic. If they let everyone behind them pit first, then they should then rejoin in some clean air again.
That's the theory. Whether or not that actually works is going to be what we're going to find out very, very shortly. But it is absolutely fascinating. Look at that, Josh Inman already up to 8th place already. So, I mean, he is really, really in a good position. Still 12 seconds behind Dancer in that 1:14 in 7th place. But given that there's about maybe, say, 50 seconds between him and 5th place, he's easily going to get that 5th place back. But like I say, I think he's pulled off blinders. Denise Pope absolutely sends it from about 2 miles back there. What a move from Denise Pope. Fantastic work. And she is absolutely on the move right now.
Yeah, I think that caught Zafiritos out a little bit. That was for position, wasn't it? That was for 20th spot, and that's not really a place you see a lot of overtaking, really. So good move made there. She's made some good moves, actually, in this race, Denise. She's had a couple of penalties, but she's made some good overtakes as well. Leone is in the pit lane as well, although that might be to serve, in fact, it will be to serve that drive-through penalty. So you can see he will drop out of the top 20 now, back to 3rd place. Felix Rupert, by the time this race finishes, will be able to close his eyes and draw the rear end of a Bentley Continental GT3 without even looking, because he's been staring at the back of it for now, getting on for the best part of an hour, 50 minutes essentially, and has at no point really that we've seen made any attempt to get past it. Oh, blimey. Right, drive-through penalty, car 37, that's Dominic Fouquet for avoidable contact with 826, so that is the reason for Fouquet's latest penalty, a drive-through this time. 5-second penalty as well for car 57, David Fong, for aggressive driving against number 48 Ian Harvey. Now, not convinced. Oh yes, we did see that, didn't we? Yes, the contact up at the top of the hill at Loikop. So that again is not a huge surprise to see David Fong being given a drive-through, and that again is going to give potentially. Well, he was already behind Loznov, wasn't he? So he's going to drop possibly out of the points with that.
Yeah, that is. Penalties are going to be penalties, aren't they? 25 minutes to go. It's not. Look, this is beyond the time now when you want to have a penalty. You want to just kind of get on and get racing. So, giving yourself a penalty at this time in the race is almost like a death sentence for your own race. You're really not going to be in for a fun time, especially to see that 5-second penalty for the likes of Verwey. That's going to come back to haunt him at the end of the race. That's going to drop him back potentially behind Wilkes once these pit stops are done. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, but yeah, it's nervy times for sure.
Yeah, although Verwey is quite a long way ahead, isn't he, of Wilkes? It was showing about 16 seconds then, so he might get away with that actually. Might drop down into about 6th or 7th maybe once all of this is done. Well, probably just 6th, isn't it? Inman will go back ahead of him, but Verwey will not, that's for sure, be able to take this 3rd place in the championship away, as it stands at least, from Regan Mitchell then, who continues to lead this race, having yet to serve his mandatory pit stop. But you can see now over half the field have now been in the pit lane to serve the stop. So we are getting to the stage now. In fact, as I say that, Regan Mitchell comes in the pit lane. So there you go. How was that for a 6th sense? The race leader is in 8 seconds clear of Novikov. I mean, that is such a strong stint, that, from Regan Mitchell. Bear in mind, he spent much of the first half hour or so stuck behind Alexander Novikov in the Bentley. Once he got through, he simply disappeared into the distance.
He certainly did. It was a good controlled effort from Regan Mitchell. For me, I'm happy because this is what I was trying to explain last week when Regan first came across onto my radar. The pace and the talent that he has got is just sensational. He's won multiple championships in various other competitions, so he has a lot of talent there. And it's great to see that being rewarded tonight, back out in 5th place. But Novikov's starting to look a little bit rattled now, Andy, or is that just me?
Well, they're in amongst traffic, aren't they? And I think Novikov maybe is struggling. The Bentley is not always the best car in traffic, is it? Because it's just not that manoeuvrable. So I think he's struggling to get through the traffic. And so Rupert is now getting more tempted than ever to make a move. But this is the exact worst moment for Rupert to try and make a move. Because not only are you trying to go wheel to wheel with Novikov, who ain't going to roll over and move out the way, but you've also got slower lapped cars to factor in. So the worst thing Rupert can do now is take advantage of a bit of a mistake here from Novikov in traffic, but the temptation is higher than ever. One of the Bentleys there moving right out of the way though, that's good to see, as they head into the right-hander at the Crocodile. So they've negotiated that little group of traffic now pretty nicely, it would appear, through the right-hander there at Cheetah. Neither of them diving for the pit lane this time. The pit entry you can see just to the right of shot there on the entry to the final corner. We switch back now though to Mike Landreth, who has Denise Pope in the Pope-mobile right behind, trying to move into 19th place. Now Denise, we know, is not bashful about making a bit of a late braking manoeuvre, and she's within striking range now of the Lamborghini, isn't she?
Certainly is. Also, I'm just remembering back to the move that Denise made around the outside of that corner, and just on the inside of the left-hander there, and absolutely flew by. The car that was involved in front, I'm sure it was the Lamborghini, wasn't it? I wonder if it was actually a blue flag call that the Lamborghini driver had and thought it was for the car behind, because the car behind Denise Pope was actually 11th place Scott Ticehurst. So I wonder if there was a little bit of a mix-up there and some frustration creeping in.
That is actually quite a good shout. I think it was Zafiratos in the Porsche, wasn't it? I think we were on board with the Porsche at the time. So yeah, that is possible, and that can be confusing, because it's getting dark out there now. You can see the light is fading. Visibility isn't great out of the back of one of these GT3 cars, and as you go into a corner like that, you don't really want to be looking too long in your mirrors. So you see the blue flag, you move out the way of whoever is behind you, and sometimes that isn't actually the right car that you've just allowed through. So yeah, that might be exactly what happened there. Second place battle, in inverted commas, comes back down through the mine shaft into Crocodiles, but you can see Rupert has dropped back this time. I wonder whether Felix might choose to try and pit sooner rather than later, try to get this undercut on Novikov, because if he can clear Novikov, he'd love to do it. He just doesn't really want to do it on the track, does he? They come out of Cheetah, but no, still, neither of them pitting, and the later we get here into the race, the more I sort of suspect they're going to go right to, well, at least the hour mark, maybe beyond the hour mark. We know these cars can do just over an hour on a tank of fuel, can't they? And of course, the later you pit, the less fuel potentially you have to put in. So it might well be that they're going to be pitting within the next 5 minutes or so, but they're leaving it right to the end of the stint just for a little splash and dash.
That may be the case, but I always get so nervous leaving it towards the end, Andy, just because my calculations, I get concerned that you know, maybe it's not enough fuel that I'm putting in, or it's I'm not thinking something through. Whereas at least with that halfway point, you've got the time to make things work here. But yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think we're going to go into the last sort of 5-10 minutes before we see the rest of the top 9 going in for the pit lane. I mean, you've got Regan Mitchell back up in the 5th place, Josh Inman in 7th who have pitted, and then Wilkes in 10th who have pitted, but that's it. Everybody else still to come into the pits. And I tell you what, Denise Pope is absolutely charging right now. This is an awesome little battle here between the Lamborghini and the McLaren.
She nearly got up the inside there into Cheetah, but thought better of it, which was sensible. Not really a place you want to run side by side. Much better to try and get a good exit here from Ingwe, up the hill, across the start-finish line, try and attack into turn 2, but the Lamborghini came off the final corner a bit better. These are two fairly similar cars, of course, in design, both mid-engined, so both going to be strong at similar parts of the circuit. That's going to make this overtake a bit more tricky, but Denise seems good on the brakes there, carries a lot more speed through turn 2, up through the kink at the Juk Sky Suite now, through 3 and 4, and then into turn 5 Barbecue. Again, not really an overtaking opportunity, and yet still Landreth defends. That's going to slow him down on the exit. Denise has carried more speed off the corner. How do you fancy around the outside move at Sunset? Denise, no, she goes to the inside instead, tries to send it up the inside through the quick right-hander. Landreth leaves a room, actually, in fairness, and that might just work, but the track goes left next, and that will suit the Lamborghini, and Mike Landreth will hang on. David, this is for 19th place. You'd be forgiven for thinking it was for the race lead. This really does illustrate that point we keep hammering home about everybody having someone to play with out there. And Denise Pope here battling Mike Landreth for 19th, as if a championship depends on it.
And for all intents and purposes, the championship doesn't. It does all rely on this. This is the thing, is that the wonderful thing about a Settle Corsa competition is that it is so immersive. I know obviously you referred to the fact that I've been out in a real life race car, and it's one of the few places that you can actually get that buzz, you get that intensity, you get into that zone where you're just like, right, you don't see the timing screen on the left hand side. You don't see that this is for 19th position. All that Denise sees right now is that Lamborghini, that bright blue and yellow Lamborghini, and she needs to get past it, because it's like a splinter in your brain as a racing driver. It's like it's gnawing away at you. That's how I don't understand how you know, our championship leader is able to sit in 3rd place, how Felix Rupert able to sit behind there, because every little ounce of him, every little part of his being is saying, go on, just do it, just send it, get that position. And you can't. And then you see Denise Pope down in 20th position. That's exactly why, because every part of you, every fibre of yourself as a racing driver wants to actually take that position and beat that car in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the great thing about sim racing, is that you do sometimes forget it's not real and you just want to keep on overtaking drivers. David Fong here tried to overtake Carlo Barbary. He could do with overtaking Barbary, actually, because he's got this 5-second penalty that will be added on after the race, and you can see there's another car, Van Nierkerk, not far behind him, so he'd like to clear Barbary and start building up a 5-second gap over the two of them. Denise Pope, meanwhile, still hasn't got past Mike Landreth. The pair of them are hemorrhaging time to Just Leon up the road. They were only about 3 seconds behind Leon a lap ago, so there might have even been another place to be had here for Pope had she got past Landreth a bit quicker, but she just can't quite find a way past the Lamborghini. Down through the mine shaft they go. As this battle goes on, David Dancer, by the way, has just pitted from inside the top 5. That was a late defensive move, but a successful one for Mike Landreth. He outbrakes himself slightly, though, and Pope again thinks about going up the inside, up the hill towards Cheetah. That's not sensible, though, so she settles back in behind the Lamborghini. Really respectful racing, this, between the two of them. Speaking of respectful racing, this is Roland against Van Nierko. That's for 14th place. Roland has not long taken this 14th place away from the Lamborghini, actually, and they're both setting off after Carlo Barbary and David Fong, who are rather holding each other up at the moment. There you can see Bentley, Porsche, Honda, Lamborghini. And is this not what is so good about GT3 racing, David? You've got so many makes of car, all built differently. The front engine Bentley, the rear engine Porsche, the mid engine Honda and Lamborghini. Absolutely nothing to choose between them. And these are the cars that if I was a 13-year-old boy again, oh, how I sort of wish I was, these are the cars I would have stuck up as posters on my bedroom wall. They look great, they sound great, and the racing they produce is absolutely fantastic. Fong up the inside of the Bentley, and there's contact. They both go around, and, well, that hands on a plate, an extra 2 positions there for both Roland and Van Nierkerk. What a shame. Just as I was saying how good the racing is, these two managed to hit each other.
I don't think I've ever seen a Bentley with a front looking that absolutely mangled. That is, that's quite something. Yes, you get instances like that, and Denise Pope. That is unfortunate. Like, that is so difficult to watch that, because you know from both sides, completely unintentional. I think Landreth braked way earlier than Pope intended there, or Pope realised there. Yeah, that's difficult to say, and I think Pope's going to get a little bit of another slap wrist there.
Yeah, there wasn't ever a gap. I mean, she was on the grass on the inside line trying to make that move. That was never going to work, I'm afraid. But, you know, these are the things you learn in sim racing, as in real racing. You don't really learn where the limit is until you exceed it. And, you eventually learn not to go for those 50-50 moves, or, well, 20-80 move maybe at best, that one. And Denise, I'm sure, will think twice about making a move up the inside into Loikop in the future. You can see her in the background there, but I do fear there will be a penalty on its way. That all happened then, not far in front of our second place battle, Felix Rupert and, our race lead battle, Novikov and Rupert, because they still haven't pitted, have they? We've still waited for Novikov, Rupert, Naj and Errol Verwood to pit, and also Ian Harvey in the BMW that's up to 7th place now, all yet to make their pit stops then. I am a bit surprised at the fact they've not pitted by now, but I suppose they are just waiting for everyone behind them to pit, so then they know they're not going to lose as many places when they make their trip into the pit lane, but they've got to be getting a bit marginal on fuel by this point, surely.
This is where fuel maps, I think, are coming into the fore right now, and at the moment Novikov is actually dragging Rupert round, so Rupert's saving a little bit of fuel, just tucking in the slipstream of Novikov and letting Novikov do all the work right now. So this works to the benefit of Felix Rupert right now, but we'll see how that pans out. New penalty coming in, lap 35, cars 57 and 55. They had an incident that is David Fong and Carlo Barberi. It's a drive-through penalty for car 57 for avoidable contact there. So yeah, perhaps no surprises there, but yeah, still a stomach punch at this late stage in the race nonetheless.
And Fong's had a couple of penalties, hasn't he? And yet he's still 15th, which is quite impressive, actually, given the fact that he's been in quite a bit of trouble with race control. Into the pit lane comes Ian Harvey, by the way. So Ian Harvey in the BMW making his pit stop. Will he drop behind Lozanov? Yes, he does. So Lozanov jumps into 10th place now. So he's currently scoring 20 points. But of course, we know that Felix Rupert, barring any disasters, will outscore him. There is Lozanov actually just ahead of Fadi Seder here, who's trying to keep Andrei Safiritos in the Porsche bay. This for 19th place, all going on one lap behind the Bentley of Lozanov, of course, who's now into the top 10. Back to the leaders. Never any more than about 6 or 7 tenths between these two all race, has there been? And Felix Rupert again just staring into the back of that Bentley. hoping, I guess, that Novikov makes a mistake or that there's an incident with traffic. He's clearly not going to go for an aggressive undercut here, Felix Rubert. He's simply going to match, I guess, what Novikov is going to do. But they must pit. They cannot, even if they can stretch the fuel the entire 75 minutes, they're not allowed. It is a mandatory pit stop, so they can't just go to the end. And I tell you what, Rubert still pushing there. The car was really sliding around as it crested the hill into the S's.
Yeah, it's looking very, very interesting. Rupert's still pushing. I think Novikov is actually getting a tiny little bit of a gap right now. Rupert, of course, tyres are going to be a big thing as well. The tyres are going to be reaching the latter stages, the better part of their life here. And yeah, I think they're going to have to think about it very, very soon. But if they can stretch it out, fair play to them. But Regan Mitchell right now, he is absolutely on it. The gap, 28 seconds for Regan Mitchell, but Regan Mitchell doing 141.6s, and Novikov, to be fair, Novikov actually 142.3 as we see Felix Rupert into the pits.
I thought one of these two were going to blink there because they had some traffic just ahead of them, and I think it made sense to pit. So Rupert is going to beat Novikov to it here. Then he's in first. So if he gets back out in some clean air, might be able to capitalise on Novikov being stuck in traffic maybe. Regan Mitchell then comes up through Cheetah. We do still anticipate that he will take over the race lead once this is all said and done. I know he's not lapping quite as quickly as Novikov on the previous lap. Out goes Rupert. And actually, this is going to be very close. Felix Rupert might just jump him. The Aston Martin has to get back up to speed, of course, but I think he's going to get out ahead of the Honda of Regan Mitchell. That is a real turn-up for the books, and Rupert has cleared him. That was the advantage to pitting later, because those that pit early will fall back behind those that haven't stopped yet. And remember, Regan was one of our earlier front runners to pit, and it has not worked out. Now, this makes for an interesting final 9.5 minutes, doesn't it? Because Regan Mitchell should be quicker than Felix Rupert, I'd imagine, in a head-to-head battle. Will Rupert choose to fight him and try and defend this position? It's surely not worth the risk.
Well, again, it's racing drivers, isn't it? Every position you're going to fight for, but Regan Mitchell is going to try and get past. Regan Mitchell's got hotter tyres as well, so should be able to get past. But this also adds another dimension. Does that mean then that if Novikov can do exactly the same and get in front of Rupert and in front of Mitchell?
Well, yes. See, I was thinking he might come out slightly behind Rupert, but of course if he comes out slightly behind Rupert, he could be alongside Regan Mitchell, couldn't he? So this is going to be very interesting. When does Alexander Novikov choose to pit? That's the next question, isn't it? He's not pitted this time. I think he's just completed another lap, so he's going to go as long as he possibly can here. But, well, doesn't this just start turning the screws now a bit for the Aston Martin here of Felix Rupert, because this isn't really what he wanted. He doesn't really want to be in a fight. Third place was more than enough for him to win the championship. The last thing he really wants is a fired up Regan Mitchell to be breathing down his neck to try and get himself back into a race winning position. Remember, Regan has not won a race this season. He had a second place finish in round number 2. That's his best finish of the year, and he now looks up the inside into turn number 2, but the Aston Martin is later on the brakes. So but too late on the brakes. Rupert runs out wide. Regan Mitchell tries to get the overlap up the hill through the Jutsky sweep. That doesn't quite work, but that tells me that Rupert is going to try and hang on to this then.
Yeah, we got a little bit of a fight on our hands with 7 3/4 minutes left to go. And again, look at Regan Mitchell. Look at the speed that he's got. This is going to be onto the right-hander here. And Mitchell, fair play to him. He is keeping this held in, and Rupert is absolutely not giving this up.
I don't like this. I don't like this because Christian Lozanov is in 10th place. If Rupert non-finishes here or goes off the road and gets damage, he could still lose the championship. He does not need to have this fight. I know I sound like a stick in the mud. I know this is a race, but there's a championship to be won here, and Felix Rupert probably doesn't need to get into a fist fight here with Regan Mitchell. The other thing this is doing, of course, is delaying them, and so Alexander Novikov out in clean air in the race lead is probably lapping quicker than them at the moment. Let's have a look then. Novikov on the my timing screen's frozen. That's a good time for it to freeze, isn't it? Novikov, though, I'd imagine is probably going a little bit quicker here than Rupert. A 42.2 Novikov was doing. And, well, let's see then what Rupert's next lap is, because, of course, his previous lap was an out lap. But for Regan Mitchell, his previous lap was a 42 flat, so he was fractionally quicker. There we go, my timing screen's now working. So in theory, Rupert and Mitchell could still hang on here, and still Novikov does not pit. So they are holding each other up here, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're losing about 0.6 of a second over Novikov, and this is looking very, very good for Novikov. But I've got to be honest, I think Regan Mitchell just setting this up very, very nicely, and this is potentially all of the championship boils down to this next 6 minutes. If Rupert starts fighting Regan Mitchell here too hard, there could be contacts, and it doesn't matter if Mitchell gets the penalty, because all Rupert has to think about is that's not gonna fix any potential damage to his championship.
Exactly, that's the thing. Regan Mitchell, yes, he doesn't want a penalty, but that doesn't make any difference to Felix Rupert. It doesn't matter why it goes wrong for Rupert. The fact is that if it does go wrong, it could have catastrophic consequences. Lozanov is not likely to gain much more ground. He's 5.4 seconds behind David Dancer for 9th position, but every position he can gain, of course, puts a bit more pressure on Rupert to bring this one home. So, 5.25 minutes still to go. The top 3 drivers have still not pitted. Are they going to pull a Schumacher, I wonder, and pit on the final lap? I don't know if there's anything in the rules that forbids that. They have to pit before the race finishes. Is that before the time elapses or before they hit the checkered flag? That's it. Oh, well, now she's pitting, so that answers part of my question, but that still leaves Alexander Novikov and Errol Verwy to come in and make their pit stop. We ride on the side here, on the door of Felix Rupert in 4th position as he comes out of the final corner, then tries to get in the slipstream of the Bentley. Who's got the straight line speed advantage? Looks like it might be the Bentley from here, because even with a slipstream, the Aston Martin isn't closing really. But does that mean that the Aston Martin's going to be better on the brakes? Rupert looks to the inside, can't get it done. Does Novikov get the car stopped? Yes, to say he does. And Felix Rupert then just about stays behind for the time being. Oh, sorry, that's Errol Verwy. I beg your pardon. That's Errol Verwy in the 85 car, who they have caught, despite the fact Verwy hasn't pitted yet.
Oh, this doesn't bode well as well, because Verwy a long way off the pace right now. He's massively out of position here, and again, he doesn't have to let Rupert pass. This is technically 4th position on the track here, but Verwy is a mobile chicane right now, holding things up. Oh my goodness me, hold your breath.
Rupert taking his championship into his own hands there, and he goes through. Now that was critical, because that's going to delay Regan Mitchell a bit more, because Verwy's not letting him go, look. Regan Mitchell trying to get up the inside. Verwy, remember, has not yet pitted, and Regan Mitchell goes straight up the inside. There's contact between the two, but the Honda goes through, and the Honda then does move back into that 3rd position. The leader is in. Alexander Novikov is in. Surely these two have delayed each other now enough that Novikov is going to come out with the race lead. We'll find out in a few seconds, but critically, Felix Rupert there got himself out of a potentially difficult moment, and he's got a bigger gap now over Regan Mitchell than he's had since the pit stop cycle began. Right, where is Novikov? There he is on the inset. He's leaving his pit box now. He's quite close, I think, to pit exit. In fact, he's right at pit exit, so there's no doubt about it. Alexander Novikov will come out with a fairly healthy race lead. He's got to get himself back up to temperature, of course, back up to speed, but the Bentley is going to be clearly ahead. We almost cut the pit exit line there. I hope he didn't get a penalty for that. Errol Verwy is in as well, so they went as long as they could there, David, on a tank of fuel.
Yeah, they certainly did. 2:45 left to go, and what a cracking race this has been. I do just have to take a brief moment out to say Christian Lozanov in the 5.45, obviously hardlines that didn't cut his way today, but what a drive, what a recovery drive from Lozanov to go from last to go to 10th position, and it looks like that position is solidified in his. A brilliant effort there, and Josh Inman so unlucky actually, he won't get that 5th place. I don't think actually Verwy would have come out and dropped behind him, so great run from Josh Inman, but again, all that Rupert has to do now is just settle in and enjoy the last 2 minutes.
Yes, he played that pretty well in the end, didn't he? He's in 2nd place. He's got a bit of a gap now over Regan Mitchell. Regan Mitchell, you've got to feel for, though, because he's been the fastest driver out there. The strategy let him down in this one. He pitted too early, in my view, put himself back in traffic, and I don't think he's going to have enough time now to get back into this, because Novikov is 2.8 seconds ahead of Repair, and Mitchell isn't exactly underneath his rear wing at the moment, is he? That gap is 3/4 of a second at the moment, so second place might still be doable, but the race win, I think, has gone begging now for Regan Mitchell. Denise Pope, by the way, just to clear that incident up, is not getting a penalty for the contact with Mike Landreth, which is interesting, but Denise Pope gets away with it then and will hang on to that 20th place that she took from Mike with a bit of a push to pass. On to the final lap we go then. One more lap to go here in the Kyalami Mini Series. Just over a minute still remains in the race. Alexander Novikov looks as though he's going to come home to take that first victory. Every race he's finished so far this season, Novikov has finished third. He had that one non-finish in round 2, but he was third in the other 3 races, and it looks, David, as though he's finally going to get that first W against his name.
Yeah, brilliant performance, and fantastic to see. I'm absolutely gutted for Regan Mitchell that he's been absolutely mugged towards the end there. But yeah, it's been a brilliant performance from Novikov. He's made it look so straightforward in his run. We almost overlooked him because obviously the battle was between Regan Mitchell and Felix Repair. But yeah, absolute blinder for Novikov. Great work done, and yeah, really happy that he's done that.
It's worth mentioning, though, that Novikov has got a lot of seat time in this Bentley. We know he is good in the Bentley. We know the Bentley is good at this circuit, and the BOP has clearly favoured the front-engine cars. So he was always likely to be a factor, but when he qualified down in 5th place, I didn't necessarily expect him to be up there fighting for the race victory. We had a great start, worked his way into the top 3 through the first couple of corners, and then played the strategy better than Regan Mitchell to come home a race winner then in the final round of the Kyalami Mini Series. Alexander Novikov comes out of Crocodile for the first time through Cheetah into Ingwe. Novikov is going to come home potentially 4th in the championship. We'll do the maths on this in a moment, but either way, he wins the 75-minute GT3 race in the Kyalami Mini Series. But second place for Felix Repair will be enough to wrap up the championship after a bit of a disastrous race for Christian Lozanov, his championship rival. Repair fought his way through there into second place at the end. It was a brilliant drive from him. Regan Mitchell 3rd, Patrick Nage 4th, and 10th position looks as though it's going to go to Christian Lozanov, and another lap or so, and I think he'd have caught the yellow Aston Martin of David Dancer. Given the fact this car was pointing the wrong way at least twice in the first 10 minutes, and he had penalties to serve as well, Christian Lozanov has driven a pretty good recovery drive. It's not quite going to be enough for the championship, David, but a really stellar effort nonetheless.
Yeah, said that earlier. Brilliant effort. Really happy. I think Christian got as much out of today as he could have. It was several incidents, and do you know what? Despite all that contact, he didn't even get a penalty.
No, you're
so
right.
Obviously, everybody else conspired against him. So I'm presuming lots of brown envelopes being sent out from Felix Repair there. Obviously, I jest, but it's heartbreaking to see that happen, because obviously it comes down to this final race, and circumstance is what gets in the way. Circumstance and you know, bad fortune.
A bit of over-aggression, I think, because although you're right, he didn't get a penalty, he certainly put himself in positions he didn't need to be in those early laps. Yes, the temptation was there to try and immediately get onto the tail of Felix Repair, but it's a 75-minute race. You're not going to win it in the first couple of laps, but you can most certainly lose it. That is it. The final race of the Kyalami Mini Series is complete, and a massive congratulations to Felix Repair, who is your champion in the first ever Kyalami Mini Series. We'll have a word with him in a moment or two. A great season it has been, a great race it's been as well. David, you mentioned earlier on, this is, in a way, in many of the drivers' eyes, especially those that weren't in championship contention, this was a standalone race, the longest race of the season, a proper GT3 race with a mandatory pit stop, and yeah, there was some brilliant racing there up and down the field, and you could really tell that some drivers were so desperate to try and end their season on a high.
They really were, and the one thing that I've loved about this series, Andy, is the fact that we haven't seen it full of the usual names and the usual contenders. We've seen a really welcome influx of new names and potentially drivers that have maybe been racing down in Split 2 or Split 3, fancying a shot at the front at the first group, and getting themselves a little bit of limelight on the way as well, Andy. But I do believe we've already got some drivers in for you.
Yeah, we've got our race winner with us now, Alexander Novikov. It took him until the final race of the season to get that race victory, but Alexander, that was a brilliant race, and really it was the strategy, I think it's fair to say, that won you that one.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
We've got you.
Yes, I think it's honestly just the strategy and Bentley being good on the fuel and letting me to go right to the end and pit at the last second for a quick splash and dash to the finish.
So was that always your plan then, to pit as late as possible? Were you ever tempted, maybe when you saw Regan pit, were you ever tempted to copy him?
No, it was my plan from the start to pit as late as possible and drive to the end.
Well, it worked really well, and it's been a strong season for you, actually. You've got to be regretting that non-finish, I guess, because if you hadn't had that, you might have been up there fighting for the championship.
Yeah, it's a shame, really. The second race was a total failure for me. So maybe even fighting for the win today, if second race went better for me. But what can you do? It's racing, I guess.
Absolutely, and there's always another championship around the corner. I'm sure we'll see you back again. Big congratulations on the race win, though, Alexander.
Yeah, thank you.
And Novikov then with the race victory. I'm going to save our champion till last. I think that's only fitting. So we will instead bring in Regan Mitchell, who was one of the stars of the show in that race. Regan, both myself and Dave Christie up here in the commentary box were really feeling sorry for you there, because you had that race won until the pit stops.
Yeah, I don't really want to talk about that outlap to not go into a rant, but yeah, it's a bit of a shame.
Do I gather that there may have been a bit of a delay maybe on that outlap from the pit lane?
A few things.
That is a shame, but you've really caught everyone's attention in that race. I mean, David Christie, my co-commentator, was bigging you up before last week's races because he knew that you really had the ability to go well, and even if the end result wasn't there for you, you showed that you were the fastest man on track today.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'll have to thank Rich Smith from SimSport because he gave me a really good setup. It just drove like it was on rails, and so I was able to just do what I needed to do. I had another 3 temps in the bag in qualifying on my last lap, but hit the curb of death, so I couldn't get it done. Lucky to keep the pole, but yeah, happy overall.
And it cements you third place in the championship, of course. You were tied for third with Errol Verwey coming into this race. He had a penalty and a bit of a disaster early on. So third place, $20 your way. You've made a small winning out of this championship. That makes it all worth it, doesn't it?
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
There you go. He's cheered up immediately with the mention of a bit of money. Regan, huge congratulations. Really entertaining race out there today.
Thank you.
Mitchell then comes home with a podium finish but gets third place in the championship. Right then, let's have a word, shall we, with our champion. Felix Rupert came into this race 8 points ahead of Christian Lozanov. And Felix, most of that race you spent staring at the back of the Bentley because really after the first couple of laps it was pretty much decided, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much, yes, because I saw Christian Lozanov not in the top 6 anymore, not in the top 7. Then he pitted very early, so I just wanted to take it safe. Save a little bit of fuel behind Alexander Novikov. Yeah, and that was pretty much it. I didn't really have a chance to overtake him because the Bentley has a much better acceleration, and I think his top end speed was also better than mine. So it was very difficult unless he would have made a mistake, but he didn't really. He did little mistakes, but not big enough. So yeah. But I was happy to overtake the Honda of Mitchell. I was very surprised that I caught that much in the pit stops, but yeah, I take it.
That was an interesting moment, actually, wasn't it? Because there were a couple of laps there at the end where you were sort of in a battle that I guess you didn't really want to be in.
Yeah, well, I wanted to defend from him because P2 is obviously nicer than P3, and I knew that Novikov, I wouldn't get Novikov because he was just a little bit too quick. So yeah, I just wanted to defend P2 and not really go for the win.
Well, you managed that, and of course you've managed to come home with the championship as well, and that must mean quite a lot, because this is a championship that really tests everything about you as a driver because of all of these different cars that you've had to race in, and you've been quick in all of them, so that sort of shows just how talented you are.
Well, you can say that, yes. I am a little bit proud, yes, of course, because as you said, it's a high diversity of cars, pretty much every class and every kind of car. So yeah, I'm happy that I came out on top, but it was a very tough fight till the end with Christian, I have to say.
It's been great fun watching the battle. It's a shame that Christian had so many bits of contact on the first lap. We'd have liked to see you go wheel to wheel, but nonetheless, you are the champion, Felix. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Felix Repair then is your Kyalami Mini Series champion. And that, I'm sad to say, David Christie, is that. It's been a whirlwind of 3 weeks, 5 fantastic races, a really worthy champion, lots of new names, to me at least, that have really caught my attention over the course of the last few weeks. I'd quite like to do this again. What do you reckon?
I think it was absolutely fantastic. 5 different cars, let's remember, over the past couple of weeks here. So real variety is what we had on offer over the past couple of weeks. And Felix Repair coming out on top there quite handsomely over Christian Lozanov. And yeah, I mean, a brilliant series. Really enjoyed it. But Novikov, for me, if it wasn't for that DNF on the second round, that disastrous second race for him, things could have been very, very different for him.
Well, yes, because he ends up 6 points behind Regan Mitchell, 40 behind Christian Lozanov. So you imagine he would have probably scored 40 points from that second round, wouldn't he? So yeah, you're absolutely right. He could have probably finished in second place. Well, if you fancy getting yourself out there on track, be that racing with the SimGrid or on Assetto Corsa Competizione in general, you can do a lot worse than head over to the Coach Dave Academy for tips on how to be a quicker driver, setups, learn how to make your way around your favourite tracks as quickly as possible. It's definitely a good way to learn how to be a good sim racer, and Coach Dave Academy, we are really grateful for their support. Thrustmaster also, with lots of sim racing equipment that can help you get better as well. Head over to their website for more information, compatible as well with the Xboxes too. If you're looking to get into sim racing, I really can't recommend it enough, because David, you and I know are both relative newcomers to the sim racing world. It's one of the best things I ever did, was buy myself a sim rig and getting involved in this weird and wacky world of sim racing, and I'm sure you feel the same.
Unfortunately, I don't have that excuse, Andy. I'm just very bad. I've been in the sim racing world for quite a while, but yeah, I've been a fan of Thrustmaster products for probably about 7 to 8 years now. Started on another brand and moved up to Thrustmaster. Had the T150, which was an amazing starter wheel. It was an amazing bit of kit, and then moved up recently to the T300 RS, a wonderful addition with the load cell pedals, the TLCMs as well. It's now what I use, and with the fact that I do the real life racing, I'm away racing this weekend, and it's what I use exclusively to get that real life experience. So it is comparable. Amazing stuff. Head over to thrustmaster.com, get yourself a bargain as well.
Yes, indeed, and we thank them very much for their continued support here on the SimGrid. Thank you to everyone that's tuned in at home to watch as well. I've been monitoring the YouTube chat. Quite a few people there asking for another season of racing here, be that the Kyalami Series or maybe a different track we could go to. There's also a vote there for your driver of the day. A few candidates, Alexander Novikov, Felix Rupert and Regan Mitchell. Let us know in the comments who you think was the best driver here this evening. It's been a fantastic evening of racing, a great season as well. Felix Rupert coming out as a very, very deserving champion over Christie and Lozanov second, and Regan Mitchell hanging on to that third place in the championship by just 6 points in the end. It's been my pleasure to be up here in the virtual commentary box alongside David Christie. Thank you so much, David, for your help as well. Looking forward to the next chance that we get to work together, which will probably be the SimGrid Sprint Cup, which is coming up in the next few weeks. So head over to the SimGrid social media pages for more information on that. We'll be back here again in the very near future. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.